Good morning, Dr. Brad. Good to see
Morning,
you.
Curt.
Uh,
We are again.
Coffee is this toast you. You did get a compliment from one of the guys about being handsome
Oh my.
yesterday, so I do want to know my effort to the get those
Needling
little
me.
bits in there is working. Uh, but anyway, I have cleaned up a little bit today, like I did yesterday, for just for you because
Thank you.
you're looking just for you, right? I mean.
Well appreciated.
Yeah, thank you. Anyway, we were just having a cute little discussion.
Yes.
And it started out with discussion my good friend and our shared
What if altist?
WhatifAltHist, Rudyard Lynch. And you made one humorous thing which I won't repeat. And was it humorous? Is it? No, it's repeatable. You said he doesn't understand the Nazis, and I couldn't remember if that was I was like, okay, I can take that as this is you're trying to start something and needle and guide the conversation sideways, or you're trying to give me something to play with Rudyard with, or you actually could be serious, and I'm not sure which one. I'm not sure any of those should be discussed.
I just like to leave it ambiguous, sir.
So let's just leave it. We're just going to leave it as you stated it, which was ambiguous.
Intentionally so.
So today is Sunday, January 28th. This is supposed to be a working session, but we do have some topics to start off with. Brad has got one going right now, which I've unfortunately lost my train of thought over. So
We were talking about what if altist late video on modernity and the dualists or the Gnostics, which I thought tied a lot of threads nicely together. And it's a beautiful work. And I shared it with my kids because I'm like, this one's worth the brilliance of this man's work is truly astounding. And what I find interesting about it is he's not attached to any academy.
Yes.
And this is how proper learning occurs, because he's truly an educator.
He's brilliant. He's autodidactic.
Yes.
And he's profoundly moral in the same way most of us in this organization share a profound moral dedication. And his ability to understand, synthesize, and teach is something I haven't really seen much.
I'm impressed by it. Like I say, I don't generally share such things, and I'm like, that guy is hitting on all cylinders, almost all cylinders.
You can read syntopic historians and syntopic you've gone out of focus. Syntopic historians and there you go. And syntopic I was thinking about syntopic philosophy. So you can read some of those people. And there's definitely something different in Rudyard's approach. It's not the typical, what I would call Anglo or Germanic European observationalist, purely neutral point of view. He is empathic with, he enabled to be empathic with, because his knowledge is that deep, of the people in any place, any geography, any civilization at any point in historical time. And he can step into their shoes. And so when he talks about history, he comes across as understanding. In other words, compassionate or understanding, or reasonable is possibly a better place.
I think that's right. It's philosophical, so it's reasonable.
And so I don't, I haven't, you don't really get that without bias. He does have a little bit of a bias because he's, from a religious background, and he's probably spirit, we would classify himself as spiritual today. So that comes across, but that's also contributes to his empathy for the people at any different point in time. So he tends to advocate for people from their frame of reference throughout history, and I think this is an incredibly powerful talent for historian. But you don't see him doing it like the left does, which is they empathize with people in time in order to undermine our way of life in European civilization, or to say that we don't have the most optimum way of living. But he says just the opposite. We have still discovered the most optimum, but we can understand why people in other places and times do it. So
Sorry about that.
I'm sorry to distract. It's just that I consider him, an intellectual peerage.
No, he's quite a phenomenon. I want to share the link to the video
Okay.
he made that he said it went in an unexpected direction, and the direction it went was in perfect alignment with my understanding. I'm like, atta boy.
Yeah.
You rang the bell. I'm like, hang on, I got to figure out how to make this. They changed the app. It's like, there it is. I'm sharing the link.
Brad, just as there are, there you go.
It's like, yes, I'm a simple man.
Well, I don't.
They spell it Simpleton, simple man.
Well, just as the left has cadres of people who march through the institution of cultural production with aims of destruction, you do realize there are sort of some epicene gnomes somewhere trying to screw with you, right? I mean, this is part of the spiritual.
Yeah. That's it. They got a guy on me.
They got
on me.
It's probably more than one. It's like they got shifts or something, and they're
They are
trying to
legion. They are legion.
Yes. It's really what elves represent in the European.
Yes. Those are not friendlies.
They're not friendlies, but they tend to border on mischievous,
yes,
rather than evil. And so they're purely evil. But so I believe there are some elves or gnomes off in the background trying to undermine your perception of the world. So that's probably what you're being.
I'll tell you this. I had a conversation with my father, which I won't share on this. I'll talk to you about it later. That was interesting.
His father's a historian.
Very particular on the facts.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's that kind of historian. He's basically a historian of technology, if I remember, military.
Yeah, it's aerospace.
Yeah,
military aviation.
So he's in a very technical and very specific field.
It's very factually oriented.
Yes. Well, that's fine.
So Rudyard's work. He went over McGilchrist's book, which I have, and he comes to the same conclusion I did, which is very fascinating. Anyway, because it's the association of it goes to our good evil function. The morality and I took some hits, and I was talking to a guy on the Twitter feed, and he's like, science has no logic. I'm like, okay, what do you mean by that? Well, he's like, it has to be metaphysical. He's like metaphysically based. And it's like, I said, oh, it is. And I described the science of what it is, which is within our instrumentality, we cannot observe where matter comes from. And that's the name for the subquantum causality that we cannot see because of the limits of our instrumentation. You may call it God. That is the metaphysical basis for what we do and how we understand it. And it's like, I have not yet received a response, but
I don't want to distract your conversation because you've already left two unfinished lily pads.
Oh my!
So I wanted to hear what you said. Well, you said first you're going to say something about Rudyard, and then you said something about McGilchrist. And
right, and it goes. He's bringing all these threads together.
Who's he?
Rudyard,
right?
WhatifAltHist, he brings it together, which is the left brain predominance in modernity that does not connect to the right brain of holistic understanding, which we are reconfiguring that with the Natural Law Institute and allowing that the connections to be made. And he explained it quite well in philosophical terms, what has occurred in a way that it absolutely relates to the science that we have generated.
You know, this thing you're on this morning, which is the correction, right?
Yes.
We developed a new set of technologies. We explored them to their limits. We exhausted their limits, and being social orders. And
Yes.
we are returning to the traditional equilibrium that is the result of the eliminating the failures of our excesses, yet retaining their successes. And you brought that up as aristocracy earlier, but you also mean it in the sense of our work in the natural law, and that our work in the natural law unifies the what we would call the spiritual and the rational. And we do that by not discounting. In other words, there's a temptation in reality to discount the demands that of the psychology necessary for humans to function rationally.
Yes.
And so we're trying to restore the rational expression of those intuitions so that we can appreciate them and no longer discount them, but we can still learn, say, okay, we have to supply these services to the subconscious in order to have people function rationally. And that's what we're doing. But in the meantime, we have to say some of those intuitions that the mind wants or the body wants are actually really bad.
Yes.
We've, of course, spent a lot of time worrying about male coercion, or in other words, force and, etc. But we haven't spent a lot of time in our law. Well, we did in the past. We haven't in modernity, limiting the feminine means of coercion, which it turns out is frankly more destructive because it's seditious and it undermines from within instead of being direct. In other words, I would say force is the most truthful thing you can do. All right.
There's no disguising it.
No disguising it. Whereas sedition and social construction are the least honest thing you can do, right? Or an obvious thing you can do. And so the problem is the female method of warfare, which is sedition by the provocation of conflict by the means of social construction. That is the most. That is, if men are bad, women are evil, because they're not. Men may be trying to change the power structure or whatever, but they're not trying to destroy the civilization from within. So anyway, go ahead.
WhatifAltHist talked about this quite interestingly in that video, in which he described the first enlightenment and a second enlightenment. The first enlightenment at the American Revolution or before, and the second enlightenment, the French Revolution, which was the release of the chaos, which was the feminization of the Enlightenment, which led to modernity.
Yes.
And I'm like, brilliant. But we are restoring to the traditional norms. That's what our work will do. It allows you to reconnect with that part which is discounted in modernity, which is the moral part. He talked about morality and wisdom and bravery, which are not measurable by test, and leading to foolish, immoral, and cowardly people occupying high places of authority. And I'm like, brilliant. That's exactly what we're suffering from.
He's aware of this himself, but he's he started out as historian and he's turning into a philosopher. He's turned into a philosopher. My advice to him is stop calling himself a YouTube anything. Like,
We agree
stop.
because you're of a YouTube is a vehicle.
Right, and I would prefer he just called himself a philosopher, and a philosopher and historian. Like I do, philosopher and social scientist. I would prefer he'd use historian, philosopher and historian, and get away.
Rebranding.
He happens to teach via YouTube because neither he nor I could actually teach in the academy. We wouldn't be tolerated, because too much truth is too painful.
That's funny because I excluded myself because I can't tolerate them. I find them to be absolutely insufferable people and organizations, which goes back to the staff meeting, which is we're creating a new university.
Yes.
Is what we're creating, because we don't need it's circumvention, as Carol Quigley would call it.
Yes.
Of the institution that is blockading us. Shoot.
So now you are going to bring up, I hope what Roger watches this because it's been very complimentary. Yeah, he knows
it should be. I cannot express higher compliments for his work
and
or him.
The thing is that, you know, when you look at the scale of his audience, which I believe can probably go up by 400% if he continues on this.
He's just a kid.
Well, no, I mean,
he's got youth on his side, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, he has time, which is the right thing. But you know, once you move, there's only so much influence you can have as a descriptive historian, whereas there's more influence you eventually develop as a prescriptive and proscriptive philosopher. And so I believe he will continue to move in his career. And I'm of course I'm the reason besides the fact that I love the guy deeply. I mean, it's like you. I mean, I love you deeply. I love him deeply. Right? He's a beautiful human being. He's, but he's young, right? I mean, he's not an old guy like us. So I just look at it as, okay, what is he going to turn into? And that looks like it's going to be good, right? So in any event, I want to help as much as I can that flowering continue to grow. Although I don't think, I mean, he would say I've had a lot of influence on him. I don't know if that's true or not. But if I have any influence that keeps him on the path of personal expansion and to become what I believe he can be, that's something I would feel was not only something I would enjoy, but a duty, because there's just, you don't get guys like this very often.
No, but I detected the influence, your influence in that work that I gave you the link for. I did. I like that, and like I say, spot on.
He's a bit, but he doesn't, he's able to take what I would put in this sort of analytic form and
code, yeah,
accessible, and he's just brilliant at it. I mean, I don't want to fawn over the guy too much. I mean, he's a good friend of mine and somebody I care about, but it's also just as an intellectual.
That's right.
I'm just inspired by his ability. All right. So, but you didn't cover McGilchrist, and since this is one of my pet peeves, I would love it if you deal with it.
Why is McGilchrist right? McGilchrist is right. He understands it in terms of brain dominance, and it's well described in that video.
Right, but
the left brain, right brain thing.
Right, the left it's a poetic version he gives.
That's right.
I don't, and
well, you got to understand where he comes from. He's a literature professor himself.
I completely understand, right? That doesn't distinguish the fact that I keep encountering people who have gone off the edge into silliness because while McGilchrist says this poetic version, he doesn't say the scientific version is expressed as the poetic version. That scientific version is predator prey, right? Right. Then those are,
yes.
it's predator in time and excuse me, a predator over time and prey in time. That's the underlying science that's going. That's what's happening. All the fuzziness, the romantic literary wrapper he puts around it to create what I view as Christian inspiration, and he would agree with that.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Sort of lends to people thinking very silly things as a consequence. Now, I've read everybody who's read his stuff, who's not a professional, who's just a reasonable intellectual, intellectually curious person, they find his work accessible and they do get it. But this whole master, what do you call it, master and
Master
emissary,
and his emissary, yes.
that's just nonsense.
We understand.
There's no mastery in the right side of the brain. It's a fucking scared little herbivore child, terrified for its existence, watching all of reality at one time with eyes on the side of its head, because it needs them if it's going to be if it's prey, right? It's a prey resource to be aware. So that's why women are from that side of the brain more than men. Right. And so versus the predator, we have our eyes in front. We can concentrate on this at a time, and we kind of don't worry about being a victim. We worry about successfully being the predator against the victim. So, I mean, this is the science behind the difference of the brains. And the other half is, which I don't remember if he goes into or not, because it's been a long time since I read the book, is that, it's the men are lean, mean problem-solving machines. We dominantly process in one hemisphere, right? But it's really fast, whereas women don't dominantly process. They process across both hemispheres. So they collect a lot of information in time, and we predict from distilled information over time. And if that had been the basis for what he said, and then he had talked about this poetic bullshit, I would have been.
No, I understand you.
I would have been much happier.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry you're unhappy, Curt.
Oh, you are not. You're just jerking my chain.
Just a little bit. Well, I love you, Curt. You're just fine.
So
I don't have any problem with your critique of or criticism of McGilchrist's work.
So how does McGilchrist's work show up in what Rudyard says?
He's talking about that specific book.
Yeah, I know, but what is,
and how does it show up? He describes it in his historic understanding in its philosophy, how it works and how that plays into what we have seen.
Yes.
So it's recognition of the metaphysical direction McGilchrist is going in, and then to the logical conclusion. So he just makes a very wonderful arc. And he ties it back to a more theological in its understanding than McGilchrist did.
Yeah, and again, I want to say that this is one of the things that I think you're better at and Rudyard is better at, which is the empathy with the common person and the struggle of life. And I think about it as empathy with the rulers and the struggle of managing these people struggling through life. And so
no, and it yes, we're in agreement.
And so I feel like this over the past year, especially this past 6 months, I've been aware of the class difference, right? I'm aware of my class, but I still consider myself a man of the people, which means I work in their interest, but that's
right.
not really true. I mean, I work in their interest, but I'm not one of them, right? And I don't think like one of them.
No.
I think of how can we govern them in a more paternal, it's a monarchical view of how to govern them.
So have you seen this video that I'm talking about?
Yes, I saw it, but I think
It's
I'm
just
pretty sure I saw it before it came out.
just wonderful, man. Anyway, that's the story. But the issue is this, and it's like this. Don't want to. This is important for me because it's like, McGilchrist is one of us.
Yes.
Okay, so we don't want to alienate him or thoughts of him. Does that make sense?
Okay, sure. It's like, you know,
Oh, grudgingly.
well,
That
you know,
was grudgingly.
this is the problem in intellectual circles, all right? If
What's
you want to
that?
criticize someone like Chomsky, I got to write a 13-volume set, right? Just to make the contrast viable enough to criticize all the points. It's like, it's the difference. I mean, the man's limited genius, right, is applied to unlimited error, right? Whereas
But no, the issue is
wait a minute, let me
the
just my
ambiguous way that McGilchrist wrote his work
yes,
causes people to error.
yes,
That's all.
right, I agree. So let me
So
finish.
we agree with Mr. McGilchrist, and we disambiguate what he did not.
Yes,
That's what we have done.
you're a very generous man. I'm just going to go out and make my excuse, okay?
Oh my.
I'm going to make my excuse, and that is that it's so much easier. And well, this is a problem on the right in general, so I'm not the only person that's a victim of this. But a victim of it? No, engaging in the folly myself.
Yes.
And that is, it's if I were to go to with Han, I've criticized Hans Hop. Okay, now I'm a Hoppian by any measure, right? I mean, right. So, but I criticize Hans Hop. Why? Because it's clear, right? To make that distinction very clearly, so that it's either really understood, right? If I criticize McGilchrist, he's one of us. I'm making that distinction very clearly in how he approaches this matter.
That's right. That's right.
So if you criticize the people that are near you because you're trying to reach perfection, which we are, truth, right? And you don't criticize, you sort of criticize the people that are halfway there more generally, and you ignore the freaking lunatic fringe because you know you're not going to convince them, anybody on their side, or even if you could. It was like back when I decided, am I going to go? How am I going to spend the rest of my life? I originally thought I didn't think it'd be on law. I thought it'd be on economics. And then I started working with Krugman stuff, and I'm like, I think I've told this story 20 times by now. Is it's like for me to counter every lie, Krugman puts out a lie every column, right? But to explain the lie for every it's like it takes me a day of work.
Right.
And 25 pages.
It's a unending effort.
Right. It's just because it's so much cheaper to sell a desirable lie versus because you have a pathway. Now you have to eliminate all the lie material around it in order to eliminate it. And so it's the sculpture problem. Whereas if you're working in your own domain with your own people, you can pull off a little piece of clay and fix that, right? I mean, it's a little thing, but when you're talking about dealing with the opposition, you're a stone carver, and you've got to eliminate all the lie around the truth in order to expose it. It's
Right.
just so much more work to be eliminative of all the lie than it is to be a corrective of a minor error.
We understand one another.
And so, you know, I know we all do that, and I know I do that, and it's not good. But it'd be like, well, you know, I criticize Hop in particular, but I mean, what did I learn from him? I learned the foundations of the logic from him. I mean, I just fixed what he depended the logic upon, right? So I mean, you do that all, but you know, not he'll be mad at me forever until he passes, probably.
Oh my. I'm sorry.
No, it's
But
fine.
madness is its own thing.
I'm a disrespectful American and not properly German in my respect, demeanor, behavior, and deference for those older and more achieved from me. I'm an American that is basically a pirate, I guess, from his
Upstart pirate.
an upstart pirate.
That's what we do, sir.
Yeah.
That's just how we operate. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry if you find it offensive.
Anyway, I love him. He doesn't have to love me. I love him anyway. It's like,
That's right.
right. It's like my daughters. I doubt they love me. I'm sure one of them doesn't.
Oh my. I think
But
you're
I love
mistaken,
them
and I pray you're mistaken.
anyway. Pretty sure I'm not. Anyway,
Oh my.
it doesn't, you mean,
That one struck a little too close to home.
it is what it is.
It is what it is.
You can't, why do you, I always look at it as, why do you want the tension back from your kids? If you made them and they're out successful in the world,
Right.
then your progeny is doing what it should, right? It's not about me, it's about them, right?
That's right. That's right.
If I'm happy by their success, indirectly, I don't need somebody stroking my
That's right. We understand it. Well, it's nice
what?
to be appreciated. It's nice to be appreciated.
It is nice. But again, I have a lot of people who appreciate me, and I don't,
That's right.
So, all right. So, we've spent 46 minutes talking about this particular topic so far.
Is that a good close?
I think that's a good video. Certainly I can send it to the WhatifAltHist group.
That's right.
What they think about it, but in any event. All right, so shall we toast and
Oh yeah, that will be wonderful. Curt, may I do my part?
Do your part.
I would like everybody who's enjoying this video, even if it's privately circulated only, you consider this. Hit like, hit subscribe, and the notification bell. And Curt, tell Curt that his beard looks wonderful today.
Oh God, no! You're not flipping this around on me.
I had to deflate that one before it got to me.
Tell Brad he looks handsome.
All right. Thanks, Curt.
Love you guys. See you later.